combined with an unprecedented economic shock. Combined with an unprecedented economic shock. Why do you keep saying shop? Talking with Kev Lowe. So the point of this video is that during the COVID-19 situation, there's been a lot of issues that I've really been struggling to articulate, and this has led to me having heated debates sometimes with people. They've misunderstood what I'm trying to say, and just to be clear, that's my fault for being unable to articulate it properly. And I like to question everything, and I think you should question everything, even question what you think about something, question literally everything. And I think only in doing that is that how you really learn about a subject, and how you see different sides and see all the evidence and are able to really have that knowledge about it. I like to talk about mental health, and that's been difficult. A lot of the things that have been enforced are bad for mental health. But does that mean I think those things should not have been enforced? Do you know what? I don't know. And how do I articulate all this? Someone has actually done this for me, so I'm just going to read you the article that they wrote. It's Owen Jones, a columnist for The Guardian and author of Chavs, The Demonisation of the Working Class. Going to be backwards, sorry, and the establishment and how they get away with it, and a new book called This Land, the story of the movement, which I have not read yet, but will. He's a journalist I respect, which is very rare. The article was published within the last 7 days, The Guardian, and it's called Talking About How Lockdown Affects Mental Health Doesn't Make You a COVID Denier. So we're just going to read it. Here we go. By the way, 2 things. This YouTube channel is not popular enough to be monetized, and I couldn't monetize it anyway. And this video is not sponsored by Owen Jones. This is purgatory, a barren parody of real life. We're living in monochrome, an existence bedeviled by tedium, stripped of spontaneity, robbed of little joys, but defined by ever greater stresses. This relentless assault on our well-being will only intensify. Those left fearing for their imperiled jobs in a nation with a shredded safety net in place of a welfare state, the young being deprived of their best days, the old denied the dignity and support they deserve in their later years, the millions who were already struggling with their mental health even before the old world collapsed, those imprisoned with domestic abusers, LGBTQ people locked away with bigoted relatives. This is a conversation we need to have. As things stand, talk of the mental impact of the world's greatest crisis for 3/4 of a century has been monopolised by corona deniers and anti-lockdown agitators. The crux of their argument, after all, is that the evil inherits in each public health effort are greater than those caused by the pandemic itself. For those who believe restrictive measures are unavoidable if we are to suppress a virus that claimed tens of thousands of British lives in a matter of weeks, there has been a largely unspoken fear that discussing the often gruesome impact on people's well-being will simply concede the narrative to deniers, who are marginal in public opinion but disproportionately loud in media and political circles. These self-professed skeptics wrap themselves in libertarian garb while pretending that somehow those who value human life above all other considerations are fetishizing repressive measures. In their fantastical caricature of socialism, this is the authoritarian dystopia the left secretly always crave but could never achieve through the ballot box. This nightmare is no such thing, of course. But many of us still retain a sense of guilt about talking about the impact the pandemic has had on our lives when so many others have suffered so much worse. Everyone should feel entitled to open up about all we have lost since before times disappeared in the middle of March. Prevented from seeing the people and doing the things we love for months, with worse to come, is an insult on what makes us human. That we are locked into limbo, unable to reliably make plans for the months ahead, only adds to the mental strain. How many of us psychologically bet the house on a vaccine, encouraged by our government to believe it could arrive by September this year? Young people in particular have formed a cordon sanitaire around their older and vulnerable fellow citizens, an unprecedented peacetime act of generational sacrifice, and at such cost to themselves. According to The Lancet, children's mental health deteriorated in lockdown more than any other age group, while 8 in 10 young people reported that the pandemic had made their mental health worse, with 1 in 4 opting for much worse. We know that the Tories' ideologically driven cuts left the country woefully unprepared for the pandemic, from the lack of personal protective gear to a social security system that leaves people without the financial means to self-isolate. The same applies to our woefully underfunded mental health services, which simply do not have the resources available to deal with a growing crisis. It might seem like a contradictory position. How can those of us who denounce the government for not locking down swiftly enough also bemoan the impact on our mental well-being? Yet, the deprivation of our liberty wasn't supposed to be an endless cycle of outbreaks and national lockdowns. It was to prevent the NHS being overwhelmed so it could continue to function, to stop needless deaths, and to buy time to establish a functioning test and trace system. It means our mental health well-being has been needlessly tossed into the bonfire. Not because of partying youngsters, but because of a government that relied on shambolic private contractors and sought to put the economy ahead of human life, with terrible consequences for both. The most authoritarian peacetime measures in the history of democracy, combined with an unprecedented economic shock and the looming collapse in living standards, has produced a seismic mental health crisis. It would be a grave error if we were to refuse an open conversation about this emergency out of fear that doing so would only embolden coronavirus deniers or belittle the pain of those grieving for their loved ones. From Japan to India, suicide rates are soaring. Only an honest discussion about the mental health crisis will pressure governments to provide the resources and services needed to support the most vulnerable. Ours is an age of necessary sacrifice, but that should not mean needless self-harm, as millions are caught once again in the ever-tightening vice of lockdown. It is a national conversation we need more than ever. Thank you. I hope everyone's all right. If you're not, that's okay too. Just look after yourself, give yourself some time, and when you are ready, try again. Thank you.